Hi. I'm Valarie. That's me. Hi, baby. So, a little bit about me, for those that I haven't talked your ear off at some point this weekend already. I have had a few different career paths over the course of my very short, youthful life. For at one point, I did medical billing, which is where you fight with insurance companies. It's soulless, draining work. I had to be the jerk face that basically called people to say, your insurance isn't covering this bill, you owe us $5,000. That was me. So I decided I didn't like being Satan.
The voice was familiar.
Yeah, yes. I didn't like that job. I was a bar bouncer for a few years. That was fun. It's really neat to get paid very little money to fight drunken frat boys. That was neat. And then I was a stay-at-home mom for about 5 years. That's the worst job I've ever had, because the first job I've ever had that I wasn't any good at, right? I tend to be good at things I try to do, except for being a stay-at-home mom. That was just awful. My performance reviews from my children were, mixed. I have one manager who thinks I'm doing an okay job, one who has much higher standards. But when I was a stay-at-home mom, I did things that really freaked out the other stay-at-home moms. For example, I lived in a rather large home, too large as the person who had to clean it, and I had a color-coded indexed and tabbed spreadsheet for the average amount of time it took to clean each room, sometimes components of rooms, within the house. And I had segregated the home into 4 zones so that I could clean one zone Monday through Thursday. The house was never clean at the same time, but that's okay. It was terrifying, actually, looking back at how project manager-y-ish I was about being a stay-at-home mom, because I sucked at the actual cleaning, but the planning was my jam, right? I got that. So I have an awesome partner who's 20 some odd years into an awesome career. He's a technical architect. And through him, and sort of seeing what he did and going to work functions, I realized that software development is just logic problems. It's just problem solving. It's, did anyone ever do the penny press logic problem books as a kid? I love those things that, there are 5 people, each of whom are wearing a different color shirt, and each of whom have a different pet, and then they'll give you like little clues, and you have to logic out who wore the purple shirt with the, in the, library with the candelabra. Logic problems. That's also my jam. So I did a coding boot camp 2 years ago. Actually, I'm coming up on my anniversary of starting my coding boot camp. And I did that, a 6-month program for web development. And about halfway through, I realized I did not want to be in web development, which is really sad when you're $9,000 into a boot camp. Someone introduced me to the concept of DevOps and DevOps culture. Not so much the tools, but the culture. And I thought, this is me. This is being a stay-at-home mom. That's all DevOps is. DevOps is getting people to communicate effectively, collaborate, so that you can make smaller changes more quickly, make a better project. Oh, this is being a stay-at-home mom. Okay, cool. So I have been working as a junior DevOps engineer for the last year at a great little company in Atlanta, Airbus Aerial. And I was introduced about a year ago, roughly around when I started my role, to Wardley maps. Does anyone actually know anything about Wardley maps? Yes. Yes, that really gives me a lot of leeway to say things that are wrong, because no one's going to know. So, I was at DevOps Days Atlanta, and one of the kindly folk in the sponsor room said, the way that you like to organize things and your mom approach to working, I think Wardley maps would really intrigue you. So, I'm going to give you a little bit of a rundown on what they are to start out, because, well, duh, we probably need to define what we're talking about. I make a lot of jokes, but I try to give enough technical content, so they'll be there. I compare everything I do at work to being a mom, because that's the job that has given me the most satisfaction in this life. I really dig my kids. They're back there. Forgive me, by the way, I have a 1-month-old in the room, which for those that know what that means, I haven't been allowed to take my Adderall in 10 months. Forgive me if I tangent and get a little distracted. It's really hard being off of the ADD medication. So, A little bit about Wardley maps. They are thus named after a man named Simon Wardley. He's delightful. I like him so much. So he has a medium. I think he's like 19 or 25 chapters into what Wardley maps are. I cannot emphasize enough, even if you just read the first 3 chapters, it will change the way that you attack project planning. He will open your mind. I'm going to give you the briefest Reader's Digest version of his intro because, I mean, obviously his intro is better than anything I could create on my own. So heavily borrowed from his medium. He was running a business, and how many of you have ever had one of your coworkers or someone at a higher level give you like a piece of paper with mission statements and our vision, and it's blocks of text, and it's all really boring, and it's sort of formulaic, right? We are going to synergistically redefine cutting edge technology benefiting end users while making, like, if you can add in the words like blockchain and synergistic, you get a prize at the end of it, right? He actually, Mr. Wardley calls them business level abstractions, or BLAs. The BLAs. That's not so great for finding your way, right? I mean, I'm dyslexic, so I really hate those posters and memos and things, just big blocks of text that are supposed to tell me what my company is moving towards. I'm not a big fan. Neither was he. So he started thinking about ways to visually represent movement within a business or through a project or at any level that's based on an actual map, right? So one of the examples he gives is Thermopylae, right? Does everyone take the time to watch 300, which was based on nothing resembling historical fact? 300. All right. I forgive it because 300 gave us this really great love scene between Lena Headey and whoever that guy was. And so I'll forgive them for not even sort of trying to be historically accurate. But the real Thermopylae, basically looking at the landscape of Greece, right? You got about 4,000 Greeks who needed to defend several cities. You got 170,000 Persians coming to enslave them. Don't like the odds, right? So basically, looking at the terrain, they were able to force the Persians into a very narrow passage if they wanted to come and attack, like Athens, right? It made it so that 4,000 people could, because of a bottleneck, defend against 170,000 Persians while the rest of Greece sort of mobilized and got more troops in. It wasn't 300, it wasn't nearly as sexy as the movie made it. I'm sure that it was, cinematic in its own way. But this is one of my favorite examples of this. All right, so you're a Greek soldier, and the Persians are coming. Which one of these tells you what to do, right? Looking at these, we've got our SWOT diagram, and we've got a map. Which one makes you feel like your leader knows what they're doing and has an actual plan, right? Definitely this one. All right, so we're gonna block off so that they can't sail in and attack us down here, make them go through the hot gates at the pass at Thermopylae. This is a plan. It's independent of language, right? Anyone can look at that. You might not know what the words mean, but you can probably figure out their cities. This is boring, and I hate getting this sort of thing on my desk. It doesn't tell you. I mean, if I'm a Greek soldier, I'm going to focus right here and right there on these words that are sort of discouraging. Okay, that's one example. Another example that Mr. Wardley likes to use is chess, right? So we can look at what happened with words. So white moved a pawn, black moved a pawn, white moved a pawn, black moved queen. We've got checkmate. Or we can look at a visual representation, and if you know the rules of chess, like you know the rules of business or the rules of a development project, you can piece together exactly what happened. Which one got moved first, second, third, fourth, and now we're in check, right? It's a really fun to study chessboards so that you can beat your kids in chess after you've bet them extra chores, by the way. Okay, so obviously things like war, battles, project planning, all similar things, they're not linear. You don't start out with your business, you don't start out a project, and say, we're going to do A, B, and C, and then it's going to work perfectly. It's iterative, right? I like that he compares it to paintball. So let's say you're at an awesome team building exercise because your culture committee had a bigger budget this month, and you're all playing team paintball with your coworkers. So you decide, okay, front end devs, you're going to flank this way, back end devs, you're going to flank that way, we're going to surround them, we're going to attack, we're going to win. Woo. And then out of nowhere, those assholes from marketing ambush you. So you can't stick to the original plan, right? You've got to adjust. Same thing when we talk about the mapping in a second, and I show you an actual map. Obviously, over time, it's going to change. It's cool, though, because you can see movement. You can see where you're headed. So how do we translate this to business? I mean, it's all well and good to say that I think we would all agree. Seeing a map of how to get to your friend's party is more effective than a list of instructions saying, go about 2-ish miles until you see the yellow dog that's always by the mailbox, take a right. I mean, like, obviously the map's better, but how do you map a business or a project or something of that nature? Well, this is a basic Wardley map, one of his sort of basic examples. When you're following Google Maps to drive somewhere, you have to have an anchor point. You have to know sort of where you are, right? Our anchor goes up at the top. That's our customer in this case. So when he did this map, he was running a company that handled online photos, right? First axis we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about this one, the value chain. So things are placed on this map relative to how much value they bring to the end user, or whoever your anchor point is, in this case the customer, and also how visible they are. So clearly, your customer doesn't care who your power provider is that keeps the lights on in your office. That's invisible to them. It's a very important component of your plan. They don't see it. However, they do see your website and their ability to store photos, and they're intimately familiar with the online image manipulation component, right? You start looking at how much interaction is your customer or end user or whoever your anchor point is, how much do they see the different things, and that's where they go on that axis. Your evolution axis. This is cool. You put things based on how novel or commonplace they are, right? So power, that's a utility. Like, we have a power supply. In this culture, we are blessed beyond belief to be able to turn on the light switch, and more often than not, unless I've forgotten to pay the bill again, it's going to turn on. Great. That's commodity and utility. That's commonplace. But our product that we've created, that's custom built. This is our in-house online image manipulation, right? So that's kind of how the evolution axis works. Now, who feels like they could map out their business like this right now? You'll notice my hand's not up. So I started reading the medium Tome, and again, please go read his stuff. He's amazing. I started reading it, and everything that he says makes sense. We agree that his example about Thermopylae makes sense. Everything's logical. I don't know what how do I do that? That makes no sense to actually get there. Have you ever noticed in documentation for all sorts of products, it goes straight from hello world to huge enterprise example? Like, what can we find, like, somewhere in the middle there, like make a cup of tea or something, like a little bit more than this hello world? I can't run Amazon. Like, give me a better example in the middle. So when I realized that all of this made sense, and I really wanted to be able to use these concepts, especially with planning at work when I have new projects, I thought, well, I need to take it back to something I do understand and I do know. I wonder if I can, make this work. I did try to identify what I wanted to map at work first, right? And I tried to be super organized and together with, okay, who's my anchor point? Who are my users? Who's going to need things? Well, my external users, those are our customers at work. Internal is going to be the other developers, right? And I thought, well, I should map this first. Okay, so that's easy. We got our anchor points. I color code everything because, again, I'm dyslexic, so it makes it easier to see things. That's easy. Cool. We got that. What do my internal guys need? Well, they've got to have these environments. I've got to set up for them. That's easy. Our development environment is custom to us. Cool. And I thought, oh, I'm going like gangbusters. I got this. This is easy, right? And these are things that this needs to be able to do. And I got stuck with, well, clearly every single one of these rely on my job, building our clusters in different environments. Cool. And then I realized that things were just going in a straight line. And but this is actually the first time I tried to make one. This is not edited. It's so bad because I didn't understand how to actually do it. There was no cup of tea example. It was just hello world and how to run an enterprise level application. So I thought, okay, all right, this sucks. I don't like this. How can I bring it back to something that does make sense to me? So my family is going to go to Disney World. Has anyone ever planned a Disney World trip? Yeah, I can hear from the groans. Yeah, It's awful. It's awful. So I thought, well, I'll do that. I changed up the axes because they didn't make sense in the context of this. And it dawned on me that if it doesn't make sense, I should change it. So priorities, what has to happen first and foremost? That's what I changed that to. And then, who's going to take care of it? Right? And this is a very important line for me because I find that mom's section tends to be unreasonably large. So it was very important to me to shrink that back to something reasonable. Who's going to handle this? So I started playing with this. Fast pass rides. Do you know that you have to get on at 5 in the damn morning, 3 months before you're going to ride a roller coaster? And you better have a T1 or you're not getting on the ride 3 months from now. And you have to reserve your rides. It's awful. So clearly, I'm going to pay someone to do that. Right? I'm not getting up that early, and I'm certainly not thinking coherently at that time unless I'm still awake and drunk from the night before. So cool. I'm going to pay someone and outsource that. All right, what needs to happen next? I started going through and trying to, I tried to show what Mr. Wardley defines as the why of movement. One of the things you'll notice about this map is there's arrows, which is not included in his. There's this whole great chapter where he talks about the difference in why of purpose and why of movement. So that block of text mission statement for your company, or the chunk in the README for the repo that you're creating for a new project, that's your why of purpose. That's what are we doing? What are we hoping to accomplish in words? But how do you show movement to get there? The why of movement, for me, I felt like it was easiest to see with arrows. It indicates what needs to happen first and second, and it also shows that progress is being made. This is how my mind enjoys thinking. So dining is even worse, by the way, than fast passes. That is 6 months out. 6 months before you're going to have a hamburger, you have to get online at 5 in the morning, and you best have good internet, or you're going to starve to death at Disney World, and they're going to bury you underneath the rides. It's awful. Like, clearly, we're paying someone to do that. No, but for real, like, this was one of my spreadsheets for planning a Disney trip. It's awful. Like, really, don't ever. Has anyone ever had a spouse plan a trip to Disney that you didn't have to plan? Diamonds. She needs diamonds.
Every day.
Like,
Every day she's great.
Okay, so altering Wardley maps. I've given this talk once before, interesting side note, at Map Camp, which was combined with DevOps Days Atlanta. And in the audience was Mr. Simon Wardley. When I gave a talk about not doing the thing the way he does it, because it didn't make sense and I didn't like it. Now, mercifully, Simon Wardley is cool. He's got kind of that Rupert Giles vibe where, like, yeah, he's wearing a tweed jacket, but you know that he can, like, defend against the forces of evil with Buffy. Like, he's real cool, real cool. And what I really love about him is that early on in his writings, you'll notice that he talks about people telling him that it's not right, that it's not perfect, is great. That's how he knows people are interacting with it and using it. And he tweeted once that he can't wait for someone to show him that his method is stupid or wrong or completely irrelevant, because that'll mean a new thing has evolved. And I love the confidence that he has to say, no, I don't have to be right. I don't have to be perfect. It's still cool. I think he even says, like, no model is perfect, but some are useful. And that's sort of the default for him. So in trying to alter what he did to figure out how to do it right, like he does, what I realized is I don't want to do it like he does, because I'm not a CEO running a business, and at a project level, different axes made better sense to me. How can I use this, otherwise? So before trying another work project, I thought I'd do something a little closer to home, right? So instead of my anchor point being the end users, my children, I decided I wanted to emphasize movement by making my anchor point the end goal. Because if they do all the things they're supposed to do on chore day, I will happily stuff their little faces with donuts, right? Diabetes for everybody. So donuts goes up top, the goal in this case. And then I kept the who handles this. I really like that. For projects, I really like the concept of making delineation of duty super easy to see. So it's a kid's chore chart. And I thought, well, if I've done this in a way that makes sense, I should be able to ask my kids what they see. So, Siler, what's the first thing you have to do according to this chart?
Well, for me, it's gather notebooks.
Yeah, okay. And so I thought I would be able to maybe give this to my kids and they would just get their chores done. And then I realized that my then 4-year-old didn't know how to read. Woo. Okay, so that's not going to work. Now, she can outsource the job of reading to her brother, and she often does. She's very resourceful. It's like living with the Velociraptor, y'all. I mean, she's terrifying. But what if he's not around? What if he's taking a PTO day and she can't outsource the reading? She still has to do her chores because I am still a tyrant. So I thought, okay, what if we did it with images, right? So Anya, what's the first thing you have to do? Be shy. That's cute. That's a nice cover. Okay, so now we've gone with images, and we've still got arrows indicating what happens for a second, who's in charge of what. They figured out pretty quickly that if it's in the middle on the line, they're both sort of responsible for it. And I know that you're sitting there thinking, what in the hell does this have to do with me writing code? Here's the thing. Through altering and going through repetition, it made me think about how we attack planning projects. So, work project. I wrote some demo tests. So basically, I wanted our non-developers, our sales guys, our flight ops guys, to be able to log into their computers, pull up a terminal, write as few words as possible because I'm sweet that way, and just run in the background, headless testing, all the workflows that they need for the demo that's coming up in an hour, so that if it doesn't work, one, they can let us know and the dev team can attack whatever bug's going on. Two, so I can do custom error reporting, because what do we get from non-developers when they're reporting an error? It's broken. What is it? What do you mean it's broken? What behavior? Can you replicate it? Oh my God. So I wanted to write a bunch of error reporting that we could get, so when they say it no worky, okay, now we know where it broke. So I wrote some Selenium tests that could just run. And then one of my coworkers, who's very wise, pointed out to me I should probably run that in a Docker container, because no way are our flight ops guys going to open up their Mac and install a different version of Ruby than what's already there and then indicate which one should be used. And, oh, okay, cool. I'll set up an environment for them. So I decided to remove that anchor point to the side where it's always visible. It's not even on the map. As I change other things, I wanted to always remember who I'm writing this for, right? If you're writing something for your dev team, your README is going to look vastly different than if you're writing it for your marketing folks, yeah? Okay, I wanted to keep the end users in mind. You'll notice the font's a little funky, because if you Google dyslexia-friendly fonts for G Suite, that's one of the fonts that pops up. It's a little thing that you can do when you're collaborating on a team that no one's probably ever going to notice, but I guarantee at some point someone will be like, hey, this was easier for me. Excellent. And I like to be reminded of my needs. What am I doing this for? When you're writing out on a whiteboard your objectives and the steps and what you're going to do moving through a project, it's nice to have that reminder of where are we moving towards? What needs to be accomplished? What matters? So I put those over there. And I changed these axes. So in sprint planning, when you're doing story points, it's based on, at least on my team, we base our points on how much could be broken if you mess this up. How many other things are you interacting with? And that's how many points you get, right? So a 1 point thing could be hours long, but you're not going to break anything while you're doing it, right? I value my time more than I value breaking things. So for me, sticking to time makes sense. When you have 3 children, time is the most valuable commodity you possess. And I like to organize things by, okay, of the things that have to be accomplished, where do they fall on that time continuum, right? And then I changed the Genesis axis to what has to happen first before we can even really start banging out any code, what's going to happen during the actual development time, and then this is, we know we're done, right? Again, this is how my mind works. I would love it at some point if you actually try to use mapping for any iteration of this, or the actual Simon method. I would love if you would just tweet me a picture and make sure that you do it how it makes sense to your mind, because I would love to see like the different axes you guys come up with and what works for y'all. Okay, so I just started going through like what has to happen for planning and what's dependent on other things, right? Cool, so we get here, and now I know that my guys, by the end, when it's completed, they're gonna be able to just Docker run, and I can make it really, really simple for them, and it'll just run headlessly a bunch of Selenium tests, and it'll spit back, hey, Val does her job really well, and we're at 100% uptime. Or, hey, this isn't working, and here's where it went wrong, and here's how, and here's what someone needs to fix. And then I thought about the goofy chart for my pre-literate, I don't want to call her illiterate, that's mean, pre-literate 4-year-old. What if you think about the fact that you work with people from all over who might not have touched different technologies, and just a little icon can help them in their Googling. I work for a multinational company. Airbus Aerial is a little tiny startup, no we're not, tiny little subsidiary of Airbus that makes the airplanes and the satellites. We have people from all over the world in and out. I think images should be used everywhere. I am a fan of IKEA instructions. I defy you to mess up your Billy bookcase with the IKEA graphical instructions. So I added those in. So this is how my mind understands mapping. What I learned through this process is that, one, you can find the coolest thing and have it not work for you, and that doesn't make it less cool and less useful, right? I am so thankful that someone introduced me to Wardley maps, because it changed the way that I plan my job. When I am tasked with a ticket to build something or create a new way of doing something, it makes it incredibly easy to get the work done when I know where I'm going, right? I mean, if you ever sit down in front of a blank text editor and say, all right, I've got to write something, and then you sit and you stare, and then you start, and then you erase, and you start and erase, start and erase, like that's not useful. Planning is just absolutely key, yes? I learned that it's not wrong to completely overhaul what someone else has dedicated their life to, as it turns out. I mean, think of the number of artists, musicians, people in other fields and industries that say, wow, it's always been done this way, and I think it's better if I completely change it. In our industry, that's how huge innovations happen, is we think, it's always been done this way, why? And maybe we should do it differently, completely. And that's how we end up with like an iPhone. So I feel pretty good. I will tell you, Simon Wardley, who I adore, tweeted from my last talk that he was so happy to see that someone had overhauled, and he couldn't wait to see other people try it differently too. So love him. And also because that would have been a super awkward dinner after with all the speakers. Hi. It's fine. So I would love it if everyone would try this at home. This is one of those times you can try it at home. And just remember that however your mind needs to break down the task, be it by time, by responsibility, by difficulty level, by how much pre-planning do you have to do. So let's say you're doing a project and you have to use a framework you've never touched. You might need to somehow graphically represent the fact that it's not as easy as use this framework. Well, you're gonna have to dedicate a couple of hours, maybe watch a tutorial, maybe read through some really crappy documentation that goes straight from Hello World to Run the World. That's another thing that you can factor in. it does require some introspection and self-reflection to know what you need, right? I keep a little notebook at work by my desk, and every time I really screw something up or find myself questioning my life choices, wanting to die rather than write anything else because I just don't understand it, I write that down. Because I know next time this is a roadblock that I could hit again, so I need to pre-plan for that. I don't want to feel frustrated again. So I definitely recommend keeping track of times you get frustrated in your role and things that really mess you up, things that get broken and it takes you longer than it should to fix them. Write those down and maybe plan for those on your map. So yeah, barring questions, this is me. That's my website that I totally paid a friend to bang out real fast because I just despise front-end work. I'm not good at it. Wow. I take the time to learn some things because you should. You can't work with people if you don't understand what they do. Actually, Diana in the back gave an excellent example of when she was younger and started working at a family hotel. She had to go and do every single job leading up to the job she actually wanted so that she understood how everyone else's job impacted hers. So yes, I will fiddle with the front end crap, but I don't like it. So any questions for me?
So I understand the whole idea of here's a tool you want to use, and taking it into an environment like your home environment and building something and getting comfortable with the tool. But when you took it into work, how was the process of figuring out what the right axes were that were appropriate?
I'm pretty lucky because I do take thorough notes on things that mess me up. I tend to know that time management is a struggle for me. I'm severely ADD. I will hyper focus on things that don't matter and then just gloss over things that are huge and not realize I'm doing it. So I definitely do a lot to mitigate that. So for me, it was pretty clear that time is going to be a really important chunk. Because I have a tendency to do things like, it's the end of the day on Friday. So my company starts drinking at 4:30 on Friday. It is non-negotiable. We're done working. And in fact, it's not uncommon all day on Friday to hear the phrase, oh, no, that's a Monday problem. Don't ask me that until Monday. No. So if it's Friday at 2, I'm still working. I've got 2.5 hours. Delineating my projects by time gives me a better take on what chunk should I do right now with the time I have, rather than getting into something, barely scratching the surface, and then I've forgotten what I was doing by Monday, because I struggle. I do not open the computer on the weekends unless there's a big reason to. That's family days. So then by Monday, I've forgotten where I was, and so I would recommend, one, making a list of any problems you've had in the past where you found, like what are your shortcomings as an employee? What are your points of frustration that really make things difficult for you? And conversely, under what conditions do you have the most success? Like think about something you've completed that you're really proud of, or something that got you a promotion, or something that got you, recognized by your peers. Make a note of that as well, and it will give you sort of the inverse that needs to be accounted for, right? That would be my suggestion on knowing sort of, but honestly, just play with it. And well, shit, that didn't help me at all. I should probably do something else. I like to break things to figure out how they work. Anyone else?
What service did you use to buy your fast passes if you're outsourcing that?
Cupcake Travel. I wish I were kidding. Cupcake Disney plan. I can actually see me after. I'll give you. Her name is Victoria, and she's delightful and apparently perky at 5 a.m. Good for her.
It's a job requirement, right?
Yeah. God, Disney. Ugh. Anyone else? Cool. So you're welcome. We're done about 20 minutes early, which means we all can go get a beer together, right? Yeah, 'cause I'm finally no longer hungover from last night, so it's time to drink. Woo! Thank you for coming.